Welcome. So here we are to Trainer Talk. I'm so pleased to have Dr. Nancy Aikin and Dr. Paul Aikin here with me today, and we're going to be talking about EFFT, particularly with adult children and their parents. But let me introduce you to Paul and Nancy, who are my dear colleagues and friends. And amazing EFT trainers who wrote the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go program for parents and teens, and now writing a program for adult children and their parents, and doing active workshops. So EFFT experts, so glad to have you here with us, and also the directors, founders, and directors of the Sacramento Davis Center, the greater. Wait, you're gonna have to help me with that.
Greater Sacramento
Valley
Davis
for emotionally focused therapy.
Right.
And I'll put how you can reach them and contact them in the chat box as we go along. But so welcome to everyone for joining, and Paul and Nancy for joining us here. So glad to have you.
Good.
Cool. We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
In general, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you've really dialed in to focusing on these family relationships,
Right.
both with teens and families and parents, and now parents with adult children. Can you talk a little bit about, that inspiration now with this new program to help adults with their parents?
Right.
You want me to begin?
Sure.
So we did a number of Hold Me Tights many years ago, and I think we did over 20 many years ago, and we kept thinking, wouldn't this be wonderful to do with families? Would it be possible? So we got together with Sue and talked to her, and she supported us, and we put together a workshop for families and their teens. We call it Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go. Created a facilitator's guide and a DVD and so forth. And that's available on ISEF or on AikinAssociates.com. And you can order it. And we also then, after we put together the workshop for families and their teens, kept getting requests to do the same with families and their grown children. And so we've been doing, I think we've done 4 or 5 of them so far. We're putting together the facilitator's guide and another workbook and another DVD. And hopefully it will be out in the not too distant future. We have to have the time to write it up. So, but we're perfecting the workshop as we do it and go along, and we're just loving it, and it's a very, very powerful workshop.
So there was a couple of questions along with people registering to be here with you and I, with you guys and me for this trainer talk, and it's probably a question that we hear pretty often about what's the major difference when you're applying EFT, working with emotion and looking at the system, between that and couple therapy. Like what are those main components and then when we're moving really into adult children, does that look much different than when you're working with younger children? How does
Right.
Principally based?
Yeah. So EFFT really focuses on the attachment system between parent and child, and the co-parenting alliance, and the romantic couple relationship that we look at with EFT for couples is different. It's a different mutual, reciprocal, vertical relationship with romantic.
Horizontal.
I'm sorry, horizontal. I'm going like this and saying vertical. Horizontal relationship. and it's run by a different attachment system than parents and children. And so that dictates what you look at and how you begin to intervene, and how you understand blocks. Everything is run through the attachment lens of parenting.
Right. So in, general with couples, Bowlby talked about kind of three components: the caretaking system, the bonding, which is the emotional connection, I think, and then the romantic.
Right.
With couples, and with parents and children, we're looking at the caretaking system and that attachment system, the bonding, the emotion.
Exactly.
Emotion runs. Yeah.
Right. And it's
go ahead.
And this non horizontal element is huge in the sense that we're really expecting parents to do the caretaking of the children and help the children with the emotional regulation, not vice versa.
Right. And one of the things that's profound and difficult, and a big focus of our work, is that hierarchy never changes no matter how old you are. And that's a huge piece of this adult child and their parent workshop, because as we get older chronologically, there's these expectations that somehow it's going to be different, and things will clear up, tensions will resolve. Parents kind of wait for the day where they're finally old enough to understand where we're coming from and not fight us so much. And adult kids, think about, I'm finally going to be an adult and I'm going to be independent and I'll get along better with my parents. And that doesn't necessarily happen emotionally. The blocks that are hurting kids can be the same blocks when they're 3 or 30 or 13. The blocks of, I need to be heard and seen and understood by my parents, is so strong. And that's a big focus when kids and their parents start to have conflict. So developmentally, the roles change. You become, sometimes people become grandparents. Adult children often are on their own. They're financially independent, but emotionally, there can be blocks that are very, very historical between parents and children.
So if the parent-child relationship, the child came through that growing up period insecurely attached to their parents, they're not gonna be able to kind of grow up with their parents and create a more equal relationship. I guess the less secure they are, the more it's like that still, I guess, huh?
Well, I think it's the way I would think about it is that this is normal. Right?
It's always going to be that way.
It's going to be a hierarchy, but the pain around it, the understanding about it, the way to kind of work it through has happened where there's these authentic, homey type conversations, so that people then don't chafe as much when, even in the literature, adults are not referred to as equals to their parents. They're referred to as near equals.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that whole idea
will always stay like this, but the gap closes a little bit the more secure they are.
Right.
The
pain lessens.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit, like give us an example from a parent-child relationship, adult-child-parent relationship that you've seen or worked with, or maybe through a workshop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you have one?
Well, I mean, I do, but do you?
No.
So we could talk about, we just had one, but let me talk about the one last year that was pretty classic. And these people were very sophisticated. One of them was actually an EFT person. So this fellow got married and had 2 children, actually 3, and very happily married. And his mom continually felt very lonely. That now she never got to be with just her son alone.
Mm.
And it was always the son now with his wife and the children and the in-laws. And the father also felt kind of lonely too, that why aren't we ever taking hikes or doing father-son stuff? And they knew better. They knew logically that there was a lot of demand, right? But they felt lonely. They felt hurt. They felt excluded. And when they would start to ask for time alone, the son, who was now a father and a husband, felt very triggered by that, very, very irritated, and underneath hurt himself. Why don't you understand what and tune into me? Why does it have to be about you? I love you, you're included, but you're making my life so much harder because you're not accepting where I am in my life. And so he wanted this kind of unconditional acceptance, even though logically he could understand. And logically, the parents knew I'm glad he's happily married. But there was this rift that began to develop that was actually quite painful. That's a typical example.
Right. So the parents, and that's kind of the parent instigating the pressure. I guess sometimes it goes the other way where the kids are actively complaining, the adult children, why don't you show up for us? How come you're not helping me with my kids? Or how come you're not more supportive financially? Or it might also be complaining that direction.
Exactly. Why don't you want to be a grandparent? Why don't you love what's happening in my life? I thought this would be this huge cozy thing, and somehow you're traveling to Europe, enjoying your retirement. What's going on? I mean, there are these ways, but underneath that, right, there's this emotional need for kids to feel nurtured and held and protected.
And this kind of conflict can go on so that when the adult children are in their 50s and the parents are in their 70s, there's still this rift that exists between them. It's not uncommon.
And then adult children are either expected to start to take care of their parents as they age, or they want to try to get some kind of connection going, but the parents can resist that. I don't want you to tell me what to do. I don't want you to talk to my doctor. I don't want you to tell me I can't drive. And if the more insecure the attachment, the more these things are going to kick up. I mean, you're right about that, Becca.
Right. They can't navigate those life changes as easily.
Right.
Yeah.
It hurts feeling
something different than, I care for you, and so I can receive your care, or I can be vulnerable. I see you as an adult, as the parent. I see you as the adult, and that's okay that I'm, wobbly, and here you are. It makes me so proud of you that here you can reach to me in a more secure scenario. It might look
exactly. Right.
So there's a question here about thinking about near, how did you call it?
Yeah, near equal.
Right? Think about near equal.
Right.
Even in maybe very secure relationships, we just close that gap to become near equal. And then, so what do we see in those more secure families when the parent does die, when when we're orphans as adults, when both of our parents die, and what happens to that older, wiser entity that we look for, and we maybe they died prematurely, and we become the older, wiser other just by default, and we're not necessarily ready.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And we have a lot of grieving to do around that loss.
And the more insecure that is, I mean, the way I understand it is that grieving becomes much more complicated and unresolved and difficult to resolve when it's insecure attachment. It's so counterintuitive about attachment, right? Like the more secure we are, even when I actually lose you to death, the easier, not that it's not painful, but the easier is maybe not the right word, but the less complicated the grief is, because I have you internalized inside of me. So while I've lost you physically and I miss you, all the good moments, things I learned about you, the way I've integrated you as my parent into my life makes the grieving less complicated, right?
Yes.
Any secure attachment.
Any secure attachment, that's right.
Is more easily lived through, whatever you go through. And so, we introject our parents, and in EFFT, you work on that relationship, even when the parents are not in the room. So, I have my loving, stronger, wiser guide. I remember how my dad always used to say, or my mom used to say, and I now have them inside me, right? But if they can be, there was a woman in our last workshop, and again, these are very functional. This was a psychologist. Her mother actually was in EFT. They're from another country. They flew in. They had the dyad to work on. They were adults to adults. And when during the program we finally get to the forgiving injuries and hold me tight conversations, and we can talk about how we lead up to that. She said to her mom, and she asked us to sit with her, and she said, "I remember you saying to me, you liked my brother more than me. I remember you said those words when I was 5 years old." And she started to cry, and she looked 5 years old, even though she was 40. And she just was in such pain. And she said, "I always hear that sentence. No matter what happens, I feel like I'm not good enough. And it influences me every single day of my life almost."
Wow.
When she let herself into it.
Right.
You said that one sentence, and it still haunts me.
That you liked my brother better than me.
That he's your favorite.
He's your favorite, right?
What's wrong with me? And the mom tried to hear her and tried to and didn't even remember saying it, and began to talk some, we can talk about how we worked that out. The context of how she was raised, and it opened up some, but that pain was really in that. And this was this person could have been any of us, right? Not like this was a stuck person that wasn't functioning in the real world.
Yeah. So the context and all that's great for the adult kid to know, but to really have that parent say, "Oh, that hurt you so bad when you were little, and it didn't feel like you were as special to me." Yeah. To really be emotionally with them, I guess that is still what we're looking for, is that kind of responsiveness.
That kind of healing.
Totally. And even to acknowledge what parts of that may have fit in periods of life. And I'm wondering if the people listening are relating to what we're saying in their own practices or in their own lives. Do they get what we're talking about?
That would be great to know, listeners, right? All our EFT peeps, if you, what's your experience in working with adults and their parents, or adults, maybe it's even in an EFFT sort of a way because you don't have the parent in the room yet, or thinking of your own relationship, as we were talking about kind of the early death scenario. I was thinking about my own father, because he died. It wasn't particularly early, but it was too early for me. And, Um,
Yeah.
he was just barely in his very early 70s, which I think at the time that he died was the national average, so what for a man, it wasn't particularly early, but it came on very unexpectedly. And I could remember just, we think about that internal holding of them, and at those important moments, kind of hearing him.
Mhm.
He was my most secure attachment figure, my dad. Um, and remember him hearing, like imagining him, feeling him with me, like I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
So I think we do continue to experience that right across our lives.
Yeah.
So important to be
That's
able to internalize that and carry that.
that's so neat that you could feel him, Becca.
Yeah, it brings such a sweet feeling. You can see my gratitude
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are peeps listening here with us? What do you experience that brings you questions or difficulty as we think about this attachment system and the different hierarchy than it is with couples? And well, as we move from that, Paul and Nancy, have you talk a little bit more about the program?
Mhm.
What you do, because it's you are writing it up so that other people can begin to offer it as a workshop and really help
Right.
place, because that is another way to really impact generations.
Right.
Um,
Definitely.
People
Yeah.
start to feel more secure with their adults. So let's
Yeah.
see what kind of thing. So question. So it's Leilani says it's helpful framework to learn a mind shift to start to understand this within the context of families.
Mm-hmm.
And Bev says it makes sense. We all want to know that our parents cherish us.
Yeah.
Or wants to know, do you still work in dyads with adult children and one parent, or would you have a session with both parents and the adult child?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, there's the EFFT, there's therapy, and there's the workshop.
Right.
And let's focus on the workshop a bit.
Okay.
We will take whatever part of the family comes, and sometimes it's the
That's a little bit like therapy as well.
right.
Maybe you can get in the room.
Sure. But I mean, there are different. There's a conglomeration of dyads, of whole families, of two parents and two kids versus just one parent and one kid. Sometimes it's the parent and step parent, which has its own issues. But
And a single parent.
single parents.
Yeah.
One time we had two kids and their aunt because the parents weren't able to come, and the aunt had kind of taken on the caregiving role, and they all were grieving about the family members that they couldn't have in the room.
Yeah.
It's messy, it's interesting, it's creative, and it's very real.
Yeah. So kind of whoever's in the room. And I guess in an ideal way, I mean, you talked a little bit about the parent-child relationship, but also working with the parent dyad.
Right. Like this last recent workshop we did a few weeks ago, there was a family of 4 and another family of 3, and then a couple of families with just one child. But it was really interesting. So with the families of 4, with a lot of the exercises, they would split up. So the father would take a couple of the kids and the mom would take a couple of kids and do the exercise. And then there were moments where mom would meet with just one because she had met moments earlier with the other one, and the dad would meet with just one of them because moments earlier he'd met with the other one. Yeah, but the exercises are always done in dyads because attachment is dyadic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, privileging which dyad really needs the most work, and then in a workshop setting where you're able to put them into different dyads so that they can work with the problematic dyad and develop more and more security and closeness as you go along.
Right, and it's unique to each family
Right.
that
Right.
it teaches. Yeah.
So yeah, you've got this lots of moving parts kind of happening.
A lot of moving parts and a lot of faith in the attachment model and in the holding. We start the workshop on a very positive note, and we prime a lot of security, and then we slowly introduce this idea of underlying feelings, of our presence, of the hierarchy. We slowly introduce how things can, quote, go wrong in terms of demon dialogues and what runs them, and then we start to hold the idea of tracking their negative cycle together, talking to each other about it. We have clips, and we even have we started our first DVD clip with the mother and her daughter, adult daughter, tracking their negative cycle. And it's really cool. I don't know if you have it.
I do.
We do. Yeah, we have it in case. I don't know if we have time, but when people can really watch how it looks together. So there's a progression, and in therapy you have a lot more. It's focused, so you can say, I want the whole family to come, and you can look at the most problematic dyad and move into that situation. In the workshop, like in any Hold Me Tight, I think one of the best parts about it is that it's a grassroots, public, educational, walk in the door and get something for yourself. So we really have a very open door policy about who comes, and we don't try to dictate who brings who. Although there's a lot of work that happens at the front end, because people do call, they have questions, they have anxiety, and I've spent quite a bit of time talking to people before they show up. And even sometimes I'll ask for a session just to know me and get, and Paul too.
Right.
Right. Oh, that's good to know. So,
and by the way, can I say that, there are moments where we will present material to them, but we like to present the material around the experiential. So as we're doing exercises and then have discussion, they come back to the large group and there's discussion around the exercise they've just done. That we will interject things like fundamental EFT theory, right? We'll talk about emotion and how it's the vulnerable emotion that triggers the reactive emotion. And we'll just interject it. So instead of doing it through lecture form, we do it as it comes up in the workshop.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that it's really experientially based.
And the group forms this real bonding experience. Part of how we do it, and everybody will find their own way, is we do have it in our home. We do have food. We do have a lot of, we try to hold the group somewhat small so people can feel the personalized support for who they are. I don't think we'd want more than like 10 families at the most. And I think it's best if we have maybe 7 or 8.
7 or 8 families.
And some of those are just dyads. That's a lot in the room.
Right.
And so our priority is to make this as personally meaningful and safe as possible. Of course, we all do that. But we set it up in a very kind of holding way. And it's the beginning for a lot of families.
So what then becomes kind of the overarching goals of the program?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's to help people understand and make their attachments more secure with each other, right? To understand the family connection, what security looks like, and also to understand their negative cycle and what drives it, and begin to step out of it and create more positive moments, right, of reaching toward each other. So it's the same goal that we have in therapy or in Homey Tight for couples, right?
Yeah.
And they start to understand and they start to build more, they normalize their connection because they don't understand. And I think it gets a little harder when you're older. Like, why are we still having problems? We thought that time would heal this.
I'm supposed to grow up and be over this, right? Or my kid's supposed to grow up and be able to handle this stuff.
Right. You know, I forget the exact statistics, but I think it's close to 50% of parents go into debt and threaten their own retirement because they're taking care of their children's student loans.
Wow.
This is happening in this country right now.
Yeah. So that, I mean, these are clearly parents that are trying to respond to their child's need.
Right.
And, you know, whether we discuss that they need the money or not need the money, I'm sure that they can and do, but it's also, if we're looking at the system, there may be something more or different that they also need to kind of to be able to move
right. I mean, that's
I guess.
Right. I mean, that's a clearly, quote, dysfunctional solution. But, you know, because it's dangerous, but it's
right, because the parent's not going to be able to be there to continue to do that over and over.
Right.
But that saying no or holding the line or seeing what's really happening can be very difficult, right?
Exactly. And then kids are not launching. They're not launching. They're 10 years behind. And that's clear. The research is very clear about that. That's like normal now. And also kids don't have this.
We would really see this as a development within society about the increase of insecure attachment and the ways that kids are being raised, I guess.
Well, and the economic realities.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that people they tend not to think of one career anymore. And they think in their values, they look around the world and they go, I'm not going to try to get a job for security because there is no security. There's much less security. So I'm thinking more of authenticity, of going on adventures, of actualizing myself. People in their 20s to 30s and their parents are, well, wait a minute. What does that mean? I'm afraid. Parents are wired to protect and nurture their children, and when children start making choices that are risky, it's a different culture. It's very complicated and hard. So
this reminds me a little bit of some of the things you've learned from doing your workshops with teens and the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go.
Right.
We start thinking about launching. I mean, we could have some very old adults now that aren't launched. At least in American culture, you know, and some other cultures that's normalized. It's always been that way, that they're mid-20s or 30s before they launch. It's part of the, you know, the whole system of holding a family unit. We haven't had that in the same way in American culture, but that launching, you're describing kind of what could happen in complication, some of what's happening financially, but also just that preparation to, as the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go is what comes up, right? The parent doesn't quite know how to help them launch. Can you do that?
And kids don't know what launching looks like.
Yeah.
Launching doesn't look the same as it used to. And I think that's adding to the insecurity.
Yeah.
And people don't know what to do, and then they blame themselves, like somehow they're bad, they're failures, they're not doing it right. It's very painful.
Yeah, that is really difficult. Okay, so let's see, we have a couple other comments here. Can you comment on the intergenerational ruptures due to difference in values or religions or politics that happens as, you know, children are adult children and they do make their own way, make their own decisions, and that can really be a threat to
right.
the bond, to when kids start to say, I don't want to do it your way, I want to do it my own way, and the parents are like, well, I don't know how to have you as part of my family if
Right.
you change value systems than what I tried to raise you as or something.
Totally.
One of the things that we really emphasize in the workshop is how important it is for parents to listen to their adult children. And, so many parents have their own ideas of what's healthy or what's normal or whatever, and project them onto their children. And so, although they're apparently listening, they're actually their own ideas about what should be happening are interfering with actually. It's one thing to listen, it's another thing to really take in. It's another thing to really accept where their children are.
And it can be such a painful process for parents.
Right.
A loss of their own dreams, a loss of their own values, a loss of what did I embed in my child, those fears of their own adequacy.
Huge.
And a lot of what we're doing in the workshop is helping parents grieve, or helping parents really open to what their children actually feel, what they actually are experiencing, and helping parents let go of their preconceptions and be able to actually take in where their children are or what they're actually going through, right? And that's a huge piece of the healing that happens from the parent side toward the children.
And it helps the kids. I mean, the thing is, these are so powerful, these workshops. And we've gotten people writing us afterward and saying, it was so hard. It was so hard. But now it's like we have a new relationship. I never thought my mother would email me and say, this one fellow said, I've got it now. I'm going to join where you are now. But when she left the workshop, the one where, he was happily married, but she was so lonely, she asked for a session with me about a month later. And she said, I need 2 hours, 1 to vent and then 2 to do some work. And she came in for the first hour and just was like, that wasn't fair. And I couldn't believe it. And how could he say that? And I've been such a good mom. And she confessed. She said, I came home and I took all the pictures off the wall, all the photos. I went into a really, it was a death. And it really was a death. It was a grief. It was like, okay, I'm holding on to my son as my boy, and he's not the same person.
Yeah.
And then when she talked to me about how she could maybe start to join in, and be part of the whole big family. And then it took about, 3 or 4 months, and she worked on herself. And then she turned a corner, and they both emailed and talked about how grateful they were that they managed to handle the pain and move through it together.
Right.
This happens a lot, but it's tough. It's really tough.
For parents, that is a big, from the time any of us have the desire to be parents, we maybe have some idea of what we want our children to look like or hope they'll be, or, that they'll be better than us in some way, or, certainly that they would carry on our intergenerational values.
Right.
It reminds me a bit of the big fat Greek wedding, the parents that struggle when there was a interfaith marriage happening, right?
Exactly.
So a big part of what we're doing in relationship to parents is helping them come into a whole new conceptualization of what it means to be an effective and good parent.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we help them challenge some of their ways that they have assumed what was good parenting, and then help them begin to embrace things like ARE, right? Help them begin to really, be accessible, be responsive, and
Stay
be
engaged.
emotionally engaged, right?
Yeah.
Without I've got to make sure they pick a secure profession. I got to make sure they go to church. I've got to make sure they stay in the fold. I mean, it's really big and hard.
Yeah.
And then for adult children, it's so hard
Mm-hmm.
because these kids love their parents. But this is so interesting, and I don't know if the people that are listening are resonating, but but just the last thing, and then maybe we can hear a little bit more where they are. It's I don't know who's on the other end of this.
Well, and I would like to go through
The program.
the program,
Okay.
to give them a vision of
Sure. How we do it.
How it is. Hold me tight, but for families rather than couples.
Right. That would be good. But I just want to say, adult children that are in pain because they don't feel like their parents see them, they begin to feel very blocked about how caring they can be to their parents. And these are the kids that say, I'm moving to Europe. I'll see you once a year. You should be fine with that. Or they go through the motions. This one very loving son, his father got cancer. And he said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't want to hear about it. I can't, I don't have room for it. I just don't. I mean, and the thing that parents start to realize is that kid was safe enough to say that to his parents. The reframe is when your kid says to you, you have cancer and there's something wrong because I know I love you, but my heart is closed. You're on the right track.
So we're, helping them see process instead of hear content, which is so hard to do. So what are some exercises, a question about what are some exercises that help them experience that or get that shift?
You go through that.
Yeah. So we start the workshop, after the preliminaries and talking about the workshop in general and so forth. We then do a series of exercises. There's 3 exercises that are meant to create security, prime security for the workshop, right? Prime security between the parents and the children to carry into the workshop, right?
Yeah, right.
So we have them introduce each other, and around introducing each other, we're wanting them to, we have them write down what they really appreciate, cherish, respect, admire, or are pleasantly surprised about their adult child or about their parent, right? And then introduce the parent or the adult child and share that. And then we have an exercise that we call "We Come from Good Stock," right? And in this one, we have the adult children go around the circle and share a positive story that they've heard about their ancestors or about their parents or about their family in general, right? And then we each have them take a turn and then share a way in which your adult child demonstrates one positive family role or behavior or trait in the way they interact with the world as an adult, right?
And so you do this in the large group setting. They kind of think within themselves and then share.
And then they go around and share.
Right. That's so cool. I over the last couple of years have written a premarital workshop, and that priming security is such an important thing to kind of keep coming back to and to start to lead with. I love that you're doing that.
Right. Yeah. Cool. And so there's and then the final preliminary. These are like ice breaking and, like we're saying, priming security part. And so we have the families go off together and create a paragraph describing what makes you the family you are,
Huh.
right?
Right.
What is it? How do you spend time together? What is it that you guys have done together through the years to become the family? What is your family identity in a sense, right?
And acknowledging all along that there have been maybe estrangement and distance, and that it may be hard to find that right now. But that think about a time even when you were young. And it may be just like, oh, we'd watch a movie together on a Friday night, and that was fun. That really constantly, as you do in all Homey Tight and EFT, supporting, normalizing, there's no wrong answer. This is all important. You guys have hit a home run just by being here. Coming with families to a Homey Tight is a whole frightening experience.
That's amazing, right? It
So much bravery to come.
takes a lot of courage and that desire to heal, right? To do something together different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So after a little bit of talk about families and the struggles and
Some of what we've shared.
ARE and et cetera, we then do an exercise. We have the adult children fill out the ARE questionnaire,
which we've changed,
which has been modified for families.
For families, yeah.
Right? And so the adult children's fill it out. And then share their answer, share what that triggers and what that comes up with the parents. While the adult children are filling that out, we have parents think of a time when your adult children came to you with a need or a bit of sharing, and you didn't know how to have an ARE presence. You didn't know how, with compassion, to reflect on what was going on for you and contributed to your block in being able to respond. Even knowing that you may not have even known that this ARE presence was important and existed for you to share with them, right? So these are normal but complex emotions. They're hard to identify and talk through. But so the children share their response to the ARE, and the parents share their response to a time when they were blocked.
And this parents and children go off together to do this privately. And then they come back.
They kind of fill out the questionnaire themselves and then share it with each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
In a large group, there's always the choice to share and no pressure to do it. And so some share and some don't. Yeah.
I love that ARE and the adaptation of it for this use because at least in my work, both in workshops and of course in the couple therapy, and that the ARE does two things. One, it shares where we are right now, but it's also really orienting them to attachment, security, and to emotion, to what is it like when we're connected, when we're meeting each other's emotional needs, or as the parents are meeting the child's needs. That's such an important way to be foundational and also moving, starting that movement.
Parents don't know about it, and they don't know that it's good parenting.
One of us, who of us was ever educated about attachment prior to being parents,
Yeah, they often didn't receive it growing up. So hearing this is good.
You didn't have it, it's not internalized, and you weren't necessarily taught about it educationally or experientially.
Right.
And so then we go, this is all before the end of the day on the first day. There's 2 days to this workshop. We usually do it on a Saturday, Sunday. But, and so then we we have a scripted over-under role play with a mom, a dad, and adult child.
Son,
And then
so when you say that, let me just clarify that over under is like the surface emotion and
Yes.
the vertical emotion, the deeper emotion. You have a role play with each person having an kind of a inner dialogue, the more vulnerable dialogue, and the more reactive surface dialogue.
Those setting do the surface dialogue, and the person standing behind them does deeper.
Sharing the inner voice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it starts to teach about primary emotion without lecturing.
So that's a great thing to do.
An adult child, and the mom says, "So what are you doing for Thanksgiving this year?" And she'll say, "Oh my gosh, last year he didn't come. I'm so worried he won't come this year." And he, the surface says, "Oh mom, we'll talk about it later. It's in November." And he's thinking, "Uh-oh, here it comes again. What am I going to say?" And then it starts, right?
Right.
And before the end of the day,
a great script too. I mean, I do a similar script in the Hold Me Tight program, right? So that's very cool. There's a question here about if these exercises are in the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go program. You have similar exercise like this in the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go program, but right now we're talking about the Hold Me Tight for adult, Hold Me Tight program for adult children and their parents.
Their parents, yes.
It's very similar, but there's a lot more you can do with adult kids.
Oh yeah, right.
They're more motivated, they're more developed, they can self-reflect. The problems are different, but the capacity is greater. So the depth and power of this, we've had some testimonials that say it's really helped them.
Yeah. So before we go home, we introduce demon dialogues, negative cycles, what they look like, how they impact each other, etc. But we're just talking about it at this point to send them off with that in their mind, because when they come back in the morning, we begin to go directly into the exercises. And
we've got a tape of them. We show them clips, we use music. There's a lot that develops around these.
You're still working. If you're working on the attachment, we're working with emotion.
And from the time they enter the room, right?
And so we're evoking emotion. You're working with emotion. They're starting to understand and share emotion.
And we use music that is very evocative about parents and adult children.
Right.
Right.
But
I'm wondering.
So can I just quickly finish this?
Yes.
So we then, the morning of the second day, the first thing we get into negative cycles, we have the typical exercises from Hold Me Tight. And then, and we also have lists of behaviors, feelings, what I say to myself, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are 3 demon dialogue exercises that we do. And then we go to, before lunch, forgiving injuries and repairing ruptures. And we have a whole series of exercises around that. And then we break for lunch. And then in the afternoon, if we have to finish up a little bit more about that, we will. And then we go to the Hold Me Tight conversation.
And the part about that,
family style,
right? What that really means is it privileges the kid, right? The kid talks about the hurt, the injuries, and what they needed, and what they still need,
and the encouragement of the parent to be ARE with the kid.
Right.
Yes.
Share
child.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that was quick.
That you developed this program, and it's a lot like Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go, which both kind of follow the model of therapies. So it does help to do the program.
It really does.
Get your footing on doing the therapy, right? That's a way for us to internalize the model as we're teaching the program and introducing those exercises and seeing those dynamics and getting experience with that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we have this kind of policy that if someone has an adult child family that they recommend to come to a program, they can come with them with, of course, the family's permission for free and be part of the 2-day workshop.
Assist with the exercises.
Wow.
Learn how to do it, support their family. You know.
We do the same thing with Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go.
I was thinking that sounds so familiar. You do that with Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go, where the referring therapist can come and attend and be an assistant to you, to the workshop, and especially with their clients that are there with them. Yeah.
Right.
It's powerful. Yeah.
Really, what a great way to learn and help and support. So you're doing these workshops mostly in Davis right now, I think, but also starting to do some other places and getting the program formalized so that, like Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go, which is available on EFFT for purchase, that people can learn it.
And Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go has been translated or is in the process of being translated into 9 different languages.
Yeah. The need for family work is
all over the world. Yeah.
And it's growing here as far as acceptability is not the right word, but we went through a phase where family therapy really dropped off in the United States. I don't think in other countries we've seen that kind of drop off. Family units are still very strong and central.
Yes.
So we're seeing, that kind of come back.
Right.
In the U.S., which is great. So certainly this has an international reach and as a great reach. I would often see, parents send kids to therapy, but much more often see the adult come in for therapy with these unresolved feelings with their parents. And so
we all see that
in a workshop way. And also, of course, we can do it in therapy too. So understanding the principles is really helpful to do.
Right.
It in therapy too. It's a very exciting what you're, how you're developing that and helping.
Right.
Really
the next one we're going to do here in Davis is March 14th and 15th.
Yeah, so I will put here in the chat box how people can reach you. It's both at Aikin Associates, and that they'll very quickly see your Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go program. And I know when those announcements are made for the adult children program that will be there as well. Right. And then also the great things that you're doing for the Sacramento Davis Center for EFT, that's also available for.
Great. And you guys can email us if you have comments or questions. That would be awesome.
You are so generous with your time and your resources, Paul and Nancy, and the way that you drive around to get this word out as much as possible and fly around. So the other thing we might say is that I know that you'd be excited and available to go to a community, to do the workshop, and then to do a seminar for people interested in doing the workshop.
Right, and how to teach it.
And how to teach it. That's right. That you'd welcome those kinds of invitations as well, because part of your mission is to, as EFFT trainers, is to help get that word out so more and more people can replicate that and help the world become more securely attached, right?
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you, Paul and Nancy, for joining.
For inviting us to share our experience with
and
this.
And the people listening, we appreciate it. It's hard not to know where you are, but we believe you.
I should have had everyone say hello in the chat box and tell us where you're from. It's not too late. You can say goodbye and where you came from. I guess that's
okay. That's okay. But I just
anyone watching this as a replay wants you also to know that if you do respond in the chat or in the question area, that we will get those questions or follow-up chats. So no matter when or what year you end up watching this, that we're available to try to respond to you and to answer your questions.
Really cool.
Okay, thank you again.
everyone for joining. Thank you for being part of ISEFT and part of the mission to help build security.
Yeah.
One family, one couple, even one individual at a time.
Right, exactly.
All right. Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving. Maybe it'll be a family time.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That's right. Thanks so much.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.